Greetings to all members. I speak to you in changed circumstances to introduce to you the first ever RES virtual meeting, that being for the month of May. I trust everybody has adapted to the changed circumstances we find ourselves in, and that you have all re-examined how you can continue enjoying your railway pursuits. I'm pleased to report the RES committee has been proactive at looking at alternative options, and thanks to Sean, Richard, Jerry and others, we have been able to sort the RES members database, extract the email addresses and create digital Tatler, yarns and virtual meetings to send to you. It is indeed my privilege to be able to download a virtual meeting to members throughout the world in New Zealand and include you in normal activities. I thank Lindsay Benbrook sincerely for his cooperation in providing meeting material along with Sean Heenan, and I trust you will enjoy the screening. As we will not be able to hold physical meetings for at least the next 3 months, we will continue meeting in this format over that time. I would be pleased to receive members' feedback as if this format is enjoyed, and if so, we may well continue into the future. On the wider front, all RES activities have currently halted. However, the committee is continuously reviewing the situation and will advise accordingly. In the meantime, we are prudently managing the Society's affairs and financial situation. Of course, the biggest upset has been to our Glenbrook Vintage Railway. As soon as the lockdown was initiated, all operations ceased immediately, meaning that all income from trips, charters, events and daily running completely stopped. With staff employed, we are having to re-examine everything and try and see through the COVID-19 crisis and the financial implications. This is no different to what is being experienced by most heritage railways elsewhere. Regrettably, many will have heard of the Dunedin Railways has ceased operating, staff let go and the railway put into mothball. In the UK, where all heritage railways have ceased operations at present, a number have launched funding appeals, otherwise they will not survive. The GVR is determined to be a survivor. It is with this in mind that I advise the GVR is launching a funding appeal of its own, the COVID-19 Crisis Appeal. This is to enable the railway to buy time, to get through the current challenges and to look at the changed opportunities for the future. You will receive a separate email funding appeal download, and I sincerely encourage you to support this appeal to the best of your ability. Without the GVR, the future of the railway and its mainline operations is bleak. Again, thank you for joining in. Enjoy the virtual meeting, and I look forward to seeing you all again next month, June. Thank you.
For nearly 50 years, nestled in the countryside of South Auckland, tens of thousands from around Aotearoa and the globe chug over to the world-famous Glenbrook Vintage Railway. Set 45 minutes from downtown Auckland, the Glenbrook Vintage Railway, or GVR as it's fondly known, has a proud history of whānau fun, from rail tours across this beautiful whenua of ours, to our Day Out with Thomas and the County's Power Christmas train lights. The GVR is New Zealand's premier heritage railway, but now we desperately need your help.
Due to COVID-19, the railway cannot survive any longer in its current size without our essential employed staff. Enabling our volunteers, our small team of 4 essential staff provides solid foundation in rail operations, engineering and risk management. They also provide the leadership and coordination necessary to run a rail operation in today's environment. If we are unable to raise the funds required to meet our operating and maintenance costs, we will lose our staff and the Glenbrook Vintage Railway will face at least 12 months of no operation and a very bleak future beyond that.
We take our trains to you, hauling trips and tours around the country, connecting Auckland with the regions. Our passionate volunteer team is from all walks of life, mix of ages, genders and cultures. In fact, more than half of them are under 35.
We are now asking for your help. With your support through these tough times, we'll be able to help rebuild New Zealand's domestic tourism industry and continue to provide much-loved family events and activities.
Our trains have carried more than 1.5 million passengers over our 50 years, but our train is ready to head down a new line. Please don't let 50 years of dedication and hard work go to waste.
We're absolutely committed to serving our fantastic community and fighting back against the effects of COVID-19.
The next video is from Japanese beer company Kirin. In late 2019, they approached the GVR to use the railway and rolling stock for an advert for their Green Label beer. Filming took place the week prior to Auckland Anniversary Weekend in January 2020, and the crew spent 3 days on the branch line practicing and filming. A camera car was constructed on a freight wagon, and the open observation car was partially disassembled and reimagined as an extended balcony parlour car, with the train varying in length and motive power, being pulled by either WW480 or a DBR. Sit back and enjoy as we see a bit of Hollywood magic bring the railway to life.
グリーンラベルと不思議なジュークボックス。どんな未来がこちらを覗いてるかな。君の強さと僕の弱さを分け合えばどんなすごいことが起きるかな。ほらもうこんなにも幸せ。いつかは一人いつかは二人大切を増やしてゆこう。グリーンラベル。体気持ちいい美味しさ。
ミュージック。今回はこの大会からの登場になります。アイドルさんです。よろしくお願いします。
どんな未来がこちらを覗いてるかな。君の強さと僕の弱さを分け合えばどんなすごいことが起きるかな。ほらもうこんなにも幸せ。いつかは一人いつかは二人大切を増やしてゆこう。
With the return of WW644 to active service on the Glenbrook Vintage Railway, a special Railfans photographic day was arranged for Saturday the 23rd of February. WW480 was the first away with a mixed train. The rain did not dampen the spirits of the Railfans, but added to the effects of West Coast goods trains operating in West Coast weather. Robert Sweet and the Yellow Wet Weather Gear organised this popular event. WW644 and its typical NZR goods train on the steep grade of the new track extension from Blacksbridge to Fernley. During a lunch break at Glenbrook station, the train was remarshalled with 644 and 480 double heading over the new track extension. Later in the afternoon, DE 507 and the Cowans and Sheldon steam crane were added to the consist. The following day, the GVR ran their Brass Era Day for the public, with the WWs double-heading the regular passenger services. What has become a popular event at rail heritage sites around New Zealand is the Railfans Day, that gives railfans an opportunity to record genuine NZR goods trains hauled by a variety of locomotive classes on private tracks. The Ferrymead Railway is a heritage railway built on the formation of New Zealand's first public railway, the broad gauge line from Ferrymead to Christchurch that opened in 1863. The line only operated for 4 years and became redundant in 1867 with the opening of the tunnel to Littleton under the Port Hills. In 1964, rail enthusiasts began relaying track on the historic formation, and the Ferrymead Railway officially opened in 1977. The railway now operates steam, diesel and electric trains regularly and is recognised as one of the most significant rail preservation sites in New Zealand. During Easter, the Canterbury Rail Society arranged a day for rail fans to photograph and video a variety of locomotives hauling passenger, mixed and goods trains. Visiting Ferrymead was Mainline Steam's JB 1236. And the Canterbury Steam Preservation Society's 1925 Fowler from Maclean's Island. the Fowler in tandem with CB 113 on a passenger service. And the CB leading a return service on a ballast train. Built by A&G Price of Thames in 1924, CB 113 was the first of its class built for use on bush tramways. Departing Moorhouse Station, W192 was the first engine to be built by the New Zealand Railways in its Christchurch Addington workshops in 1889. JB 1236 accelerates past the operational semaphore signals protecting Moorhouse Station. The English Electric EO class pioneered electric traction in New Zealand in 1923, with the opening of the steeply graded Otira Tunnel electrified section between Otira and Arthur's Pass. D140 was built by Scott Brothers in Christchurch and entered service in January 1888. Six of the EC class were introduced in 1929 and hauled all passenger and most goods trains between Christchurch and Lyttelton through the long port tunnel. Recreating the typical NZR goods and mixed trains is not possible on the main line, but can be achieved with stunning results on heritage railways. The Waipara Railway held a Railfans Day in September, utilising Steam Incorporated's JA 1271 and wooden carriages that were returning to the North Island after completing the Grand Pacific Tours and Great New Zealand Steam Journeys private charter of the South Island. Arriving a couple of days before the Railfans Day, time was taken to familiarise the locomotive crew with 1271 and the line, so a number of runs were made to Waikari, loading vintage tractors onto a URT class wagon at Glenbrook station. Railfans poised with cameras in a photo line as JA 1271 and A428 depart Glenbrook station with the first mixed train of the day. The ride up the scenic line highlights the spectacular setting of this unique branch line railway. The light grey limestone rock formations such as Frog Rock add another dimension to the scenic railway. Following a lunch break, the next train scheduled was English Electric DG 791 that ran as far as the 3.5 kilometre peg. Retired loco driver Harry Henderson joined the railways in 1940 and spent most of his working life based at Waipara.
The JA that I drove yesterday brought back memories of the days when we used to use JA's banking branch trains up the Waipara Pass. In 1954 was the first JA I had driven, and we went down on the night 112 to Crossing Place, picked up a JA on 65 and came to Waipara, marshalled it, made up the train 206, and then went on to the back and banked it over, and from then on for quite a few years we used the JAs for banking over to Waikari.
.428 on the head, with 1271 lending a hand banking on the rear, as it used to be 50 years ago on the branch. JA 1271 hauls the train celebrating 100 years since the privately owned Wellington and Manawatu Railway Company was purchased by New Zealand Railways. On Monday the 7th of December 1908, the section that ran from Wellington to Longburn became the southern portion of the main trunk. Approaching Mackay's Crossing in 2008, and the 50th anniversary excursion behind A601 on the same day and date in 1958, Sunday the 7th of December. passing the point where the Wellington and Manawatu Railway Company's rails finally joined at Otahanga on the 3rd of November 1886. Governor Sir William Jervois performed the task of driving the last spike with over 1,000 people present to witness the event. Riding Steam Incorporated's train from Paikokariki to Palmerston North was Peter Gunderson, who was a young fireman rostered to fire A601 on the return journey in 1958. Peter recounts the 50th anniversary excursion.
Palmerston North crews operated the train both ways. Engine driver Sam Whittingham and fireman Bob Gardner travelled passenger on train 227 to uplift A601 at Paikokariki, where they ran that locomotive into Wellington light engine. Now at Wellington they turned the locomotive, did their servicing and ran the train. The engine driver Cecil Richardson and myself changed over and we did a quick service on it. Members of a New Zealand Railway and Locomotive Society, they spent many weeks cleaning up and lining, polishing etc. of A601, which brought her up to a very fine standard.
601 departing Levin and passing under the road bridge at Longburn on the original formation to Palmerston North before the Milson deviation. Out of shot to the left was Longburn Station, the northern terminus of the Wellington and Manawatu Railway Company, where passengers a century ago changed onto New Zealand Railways trains and vice versa. Peter Gunderson and Cec Richardson arriving back at Palmerston North Station to ride the train to Paikokariki. Cec and Peter stand behind 601's headboard, while Kiwi Rail loco engineers Danny Green and Dennis Sawyers look on. Both Cec and Peter commented that the 1958 excursion was offered to drivers and firemen on the top roster who declined the job. Therefore they were given the opportunity to crew A601.
We left Palmerston North with a full head of steam, travelled down to Longburn, through Longburn and on Manawatu River Bridge, where we stopped on the southern end for a photo stop for the retired members from the Wellington Manawatu Railway Company, some of whom were locomotive crews from way back in those early years. Some of the highlights on that trip was climbing the Kaparara Bank, running into Otaki into Luke with our train and crossing train 626, Wellington Auckland Express with 2 KAs on it. As a young fireman at the time, the memories have remained with me all my life, and it's something that I was very lucky to have been involved in.
The highlight of Sunday, the 7th of December 2008 for me would have been travelling in the cab of JA 1271 from Palmerston North to Tokomaru. The JA class locomotive was one class of locomotive that I never worked on as a driver while working for the New Zealand Railways. When I ran the 50th anniversary train while stopped at Shannon, I had my photo taken in the cab of A601 with a retired 85-year-old Manawatu Railway Company driver.
On Friday the 6th through to Sunday the 8th of February, the Glenbrook Vintage Railway featured the 2009 Steam and Vintage Country Festival. A special Railfans photographic train was arranged on the evening before the festival, featuring the Museum of Transport and Technology's L-Class number 507. The first train was made up of 4 goods wagons and the 6-wheeled Clemenson passenger carriage. The second train was a replica of a motor train with its small engine and one carriage. In 1907, New Zealand Railways built several 60-foot passenger car vans for use on motor trains to work branch lines. With darkness approaching, 2 photo run-bys were organised at Fernley. During the festival, L507 double-headed with GVR's WW644. Across the road from Glenbrook station, there were a variety of displays to view, including a calf dozer that were part of the New Zealand Railways Way and Works department. A long queue waits to ride in the steam-powered boat Tui on Waimara's Dam. On static display at Pukeowari Depot was WAB 800 and A423, now in the care of the Glenbrook Vintage Railway. Mainline Steam's JA1275 departs the loop, with JA1250 assisting at the rear. After a watering stop at Waitangi Stream, WW644 lifts its train on the grade to Morley Road in Glenbrook. Later in the afternoon, JA's 1250 and 1275 double-headed the final train for the day. The Steam and Vintage Festival was organised by Glenbrook Vintage Railway's marketing manager Ross Crook, with close to 6,000 people riding the trains over the 3 days of Waitangi weekend. In 1971, Ivan Thomas, the General Manager of Railways, and Peter Gordon, the Minister of Railways, came up with the idea of operating a vintage steam train between Lumsden and Kingston 2 months after regular steam operations in the South Island had been withdrawn. The bold venture, using 2 AB class locomotives and vintage carriages, was inaugurated in December 1971, with 2 return trips a day scheduled between Lumsden and Kingston during the summer season. In 1979, it was announced that the Kingston branch would be closed and that the Flyer would operate out of Invercargill, where it ran scheduled services to Bluff and Wairarapa from December 1980 until April 1982. The move was never a financial success. During 1982, a private company, Kingston Flyer Limited, came to an agreement with New Zealand Railways to lease the locomotives and carriages to operate on an isolated 14-kilometre section of the former Kingston branch. 10 years later, in December 1992, the service was taken back by New Zealand Railways. At the end of July 1995, New Zealand Rail announced that it was pulling out of the venture and that the locomotives and rolling stock were up for tender. After intense negotiations, New Zealand Rail and Kingston Flyer Limited reached an agreement that gave the Flyer a reprieve for a further 2 years. In 2001, the Flyer was back on the market after it was offered for sale as part of the Transcenic deal to Australian company West Coast Railway. Unfortunately, West Coast Railway weren't interested in purchasing the historic vintage steam train. On the 12th of February 2002, it was confirmed by Transrail that the Kingston Flyer had been purchased for $350,000 by Invest South, a company owned by the Southland Building Society. The Flyer was formally handed over to its new owners in May 2002. The latest in the Flyer's checkered career happened in November 2008, when it was advertised as a going concern for $3 million. It was Peter Gordon's firm conviction that the Kingston Flyer would operate for at least a generation. His dream exceeded that, even though there has been many changes of ownership over its 38 years of operation. The Flyer steams on, providing a service that started as an idea that led to the establishment of the famed Kingston Flyer vintage steam train. Mainline Steam's JA 1275 sprints south through Taupiri after an early morning departure from Papakura. Due to major infrastructure work in the Auckland suburban area during the weekend, the train originated from Papakura and terminated at Pukekohe. The annual main trunk trekker involves an 18-hour day for passengers completing the entire trip. A favourite spot for photographers and videographers, the Waipara River at Aotearoa. Another popular spot to capture the excursion is the grade out of Tikawiti. This long climb from Tikawiti allows those following by road a number of opportunities to leapfrog ahead of the train to various spots to capture 1275 working the grade. In the heart of the King Country, a great vantage point in the Whanganui River Valley. A scheduled 1-hour servicing stop at Taumaranui allowed passengers time to stretch their legs in this once busy railway town. To reduce the train weight for the climb ahead, the 2 tank wagons were left behind in the Taumaranui yard. Something different and unique to most passengers, a photo run by on the Railfans spiral. And arriving at National Park in a sun shower where passengers were bused to the Bayview Chateau Tongariro for a 3-course lunch. They would later join the train at Taumaranui for the return trip to Pukekohe. On Saturday the 21st of October 1961, WW561 hauled its train of 2 carriages and a car van from Whanganui to Taumaranui via the Stratford-Okahakura line. 2 days later, Dawson Wilkinson filmed the train returning home to Whanganui on Labour Monday. .561 was the last of the traditional low-boilered WWs in service in New Zealand. At Railfans, the excursion crossed northbound goods train 592, hauled by 2 DAs. .561 was suffering injector problems that eventually gave up at Karioi, 6 miles further on from Owakuni. A standby diesel was sent to tow the train through to Martin. WW561 was withdrawn from service in February 1963. Each year, Mainline Steam run their Midland mountaineer excursion from Christchurch to Greymouth, a distance of 231 kilometres. This journey through the Southern Alps is regarded as one of the 7 best rail journeys in the world, whether behind steam or diesel. By the time we reach Arthur's Pass, the west coast rain is falling and 942 loses its grip on the wet rail. The bankers are attached for the run down through the Otira tunnel and its 1:33 descent. While steam is built up at Otira, the Transalpine passes through on its journey to Christchurch. Finally, 942 was cleared for departure as the rain continues to fall. Moana Station and its tranquil setting beside Lake Brunner is a classic example of an Edwardian-style rural station. A sight that only an oil burner can produce, the flashes from the firebox. As darkness falls, the Midland mountaineer arrives in Greymouth to the flashes of digital cameras lining the flood bank. With cylinder cocks open, a handful of photographers on the station platform endeavour to capture a shot of 942 on the move. plenty of vantage points for passengers during the first photo run of the day. Not before long, the rain moves in. Running ahead of time, the excursion arrives at Springfield. The Midland Mountaineer is one of the great rail journeys in New Zealand. Steam Incorporated started off the year with their annual Eketahuna Express, hauled by AB 608 from Paikakariki to Masterton via the Manawatu Gorge. Since re-entering service 12 months ago, AB 608 has been in steam for 323 hours and has travelled 3,541 kilometres. Wayne Ward captures Ethan Calder and Cameron Carter lining up their shots for inclusion in this volume of New Zealand rail scene. Passengers were dropped off at Woodville to enjoy a day at the races, Eketahuna for a visit to the Mount Bruce Bird Sanctuary, and Opaki for lunch at Paper Road Vineyard. The excursion carried on to Masterton, where 608 was turned and serviced.